assume that most of you know me by now, but for those who don't, my name is Evan Garfinkel and I work with the land development team at Regional Group. Tonight, I'm also joined by Kelly Rodenizer from the Regional Group, Chris from NUF, and Brad and Jennifer from Novatech. So tonight we're here to share our Greystone Phase 3 site plan application with you, listen to your feedback, and answer any questions you may have on our application. We have just received both of the community and city's comments on the application. And we are currently reviewing all of the comments and the feedback that was received. I'm gonna go to the next slide here. So the subject site is located at 375 Des Châtelet Avenue, which is situated at the intersection of Scholastic and Des Châtelet Avenue. It's bounded by the Des Châtelet building to the west, Des Châtelet Avenue and the Phase 1 towns to the south, and the river to the east, and the retirement residence to the north. The Phase 3 lands were always envisioned as one of the last pieces of the puzzle to be developed within Greystone. High-level proposals and concepts for the Phase 3 site have evolved over the years, as many different uses were explored for the Des Châtelet building, which impacted the shape of the remaining Phase 3 site. While many different concepts have been explored over the years, we feel that the plan shared today is the best proposal for the lands. It's important to note that our Phase 3 plans respect our LPAT agreement and meet all the performance standards of the existing zoning. For the proposal, we're proposing 2 mid-rise buildings on the site with a central courtyard amenity space proposed for the building's residents. The buildings will be at a maximum height of 83.7 meters above sea level. And the height in this area refers to the above sea level as that was referenced in the LPAT agreement. So that height that we're proposing is compliant with both the zoning and the LPAT agreement. There are permitted projections for the building, which include a mechanical and electrical roof, an elevator roof, and a washroom. Due to the grade differential between the Des Châtelet Avenue and Scholastic Drive, so Des Châtelet sits a little bit higher. The building is 6 stories at Des Châtelet Avenue and transitions down to 7 stories closer to Scholastic Drive. The 2 buildings have 260 residential units with 266 underground parking spaces for residents and visitors. There are also 260 bicycle parking spaces proposed. The buildings have been designed for either condominium or rental, and we haven't finalized which one yet, but we would be happy to double back to the community association when we've made that decision. The main lobby and access for each building is located off of the Scholastic Drive side. We are proposing a public pedestrian pathway through the site from the future forecourt park to the river. The pathway will provide a unique and creative opportunity to create a linkage to the river while providing the opportunity to view the Des Châtelet building from the bridge. I'm now going to pass things over to Chris to speak to some details about the architectural design. Again, we will be around for any questions that might arise.
Hello, everyone. Yes, so as you could see, I mean, if you could just flip back to the site plan, the building massing is based on this idea of providing a central courtyard, so that the 2 buildings sort of surround that courtyard, and then introducing the pedestrian access that winds through the central courtyard to have a dual experience within. After the massing of the building, if you can switch to the next slide, each facade has been developed to respond to the context of each side of the building. So the corners are expressed with balconies to provide a little bit of recess, but also to provide an open feeling at the corners. The massing next to the Des Châtelet has been stepped back as you move up the building so that we reduce the scale next to the Des Châtelet building. And same as you see on the right picture, the massing is set back from the retirement home to provide more views to the river. And also—
Sorry to interrupt, Chris. We had a request that you maybe speak closer to the microphone, just a little bit louder.
Okay, thanks for pointing that out.
Thank you.
Is this better?
That's much better.
Sorry about that. So as I was saying, the view from the river, the massing is pulled back from the retirement home to provide a little bit more views for those units along that side, as well as provide the entry to the garage, which is the single point of entry for these two buildings for the underground. And now I'll pass it back to you, Evan. I think that we'll talk more about the architectural details as we get into the Q&A.
Sorry, I'm working with two screens here. So we have received, as I mentioned, all of your comments and concerns for the application. The main themes revolving around the height, the density, the compatibility between the Day Châtelet and our buildings, some of the parking rates, the traffic flow around the subdivision, and the use of the amenity or courtyard space. So I think now I will pass it over. I believe, well, I won't do questions yet because I think JC is going to go after me, if that's correct, Miles.
That is indeed correct.
Okay, so I will let JC go, and the team is around to answer any of your questions afterwards. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Evan. So I'll try to keep this brief and leave as much time for questions as possible. So just a brief overview. You know some of this already, but the application that we have in front of us is for site plan control. And this type of planning application is one for which approval has been delegated to staff by council. That being said, the ward council can always exercise its ability to lift delegated authority and have planning committee weigh in on the decision if it goes that direction. And so the file was received late this summer, circulated on August 13th. Notices were sent out to local community associations and a sign was erected on the property. The circulation period ended on September 13th and a summary of comments was provided to the applicant on September 24th. And it included all the community comments received to date, and Evan already alluded to that. So today we're here for community meeting. We're in the middle of this whole planning process. And even though the circulation period has ended, I'm still open to receiving comments, so do not worry about that. And the next step is for staff to receive a response to the comments that we've already provided to the applicant, along with our second submission. And then staff will proceed to review that submission, offer comments, and perhaps rinse and repeat as required. But the overall objective is to work with the applicant to get to a point where staff is comfortable with the proposal, and at which point we're able to move forward towards a recommendation. So that's a quite brief overview, but that's what I have for you today.
Thanks, JC. And folks, JC will stick around too as part of the broader Q&A, and questions can be directed at various members of the applicant team as well as the city planner. So before we go to the open floor, I'd like to turn it over to representatives of the local community association, the Old Ottawa East Community Association. I'm not sure who's wanting to speak on behalf of the Community Association tonight, but please go ahead and speak now. Assert yourself. Is Ron on the line, or John Dance perhaps?
Yeah, it's Ron here. I don't think we've decided on anyone to speak on behalf of the community, so perhaps we'll just take turns as we go along.
Okay, Ron. Well, did you want to get us started?
Sure. I think Evan put up a slide that showed, I guess, 6 major concerns. I just want to address the 2 concerns about the layout and the path. The layout is kind of intriguing, but it's in the wrong place. And it's in the wrong place because what you have done with that layout is you've cut off the public space, the courtyard, from everyone else in Greystone Village. You've cut it off from the two condo towers towards Clegg, from all the individual dwellings towards Clegg, from if you were to take and swing it around 90 degrees so that the L was coming down from the chalet towards Black, and then the arm was coming along the last that space. Everyone else in second concern, the tour bus on a tour bus in Hollywood going by the residences of the rich and famous, you would be up on the elevated pathway looking down at the yards and looking out at the houses of the people living there, but you wouldn't be able to get out and enjoy that particular courtyard. So I also feel that the slope from the top to the bottom is going to be whatever the slope turns out to be. If you try and elevate to level out one portion of that slope, then you're going to have to make the remaining even sharper slope than what the average would be. So try and think of some way of bringing that down to ground level. Those are my two concerns: the layout of the building and the elevated pathway. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. And did another member of the community association want to weigh in before we move to an open Q&A? I did see Phyllis and John Dance on the attendees list as well.
I wonder if I could just make one comment. It's Phyllis.
Hi, Phyllis. Yeah.
I thought it would be really helpful to see a picture looking at this development from the west, because you showed us the views from the back, but I think one of the concerns we've had is if you're looking at the Des Châtelets Heritage Building, on your north side of that, there was a planned community center. On the south side of it is a 6-story structure. So if you could give us some sense as to what that actually looks like, because it seems to me there is going to be not much symmetry, which will be really detracting from it. But you haven't showed pictures of that. And I can't remember if you ever showed those before, but thanks.
Kelly?
Miles and Phyllis, we had filed with our application the view down the Grand Allée, looking down at the Châtelet building, but we've been working with with Chris to come up with some just be able to show that. So we are working on some of those visuals, and when they're ready, we'll send them across, Phyllis.
And I just had a comment in the chat from Greg asking if someone wouldn't mind flipping through the presentation as individuals are speaking to issues, speaking to the presentation for someone to, that's Evan, yeah, that'd be great. Wonderful, that does help. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so folks, what we're going to do now is open it up for anyone to raise a question. I'll ask that you use the raise hand function, so that I can keep an eye on the, when people are in queue and can call on your name and facilitate easier that way. So please use the raise hand function if you'd like to ask a question to the applicant team or city staff or whomever. Or even just say in the chat, I'd like to ask a question, and I can call on you that way as well, if that's easier. Okay, Christine. Please unmute and go ahead.
Hi there, I'm trying to figure my video on, but obviously not that talented, so apologies for that, because I believe in increased accessibility. So my question is, and I'll be full disclosure, I live in Terraces 1, and I love the neighborhood, and really happy I had an opportunity to move here. What you're proposing, so right now what we're seeing, without the school, without the community center, without any of the use planned for the building adjacent to the condo towers, is that there is significant traffic. There's significant amount of cars parked on the street. So what you're describing in terms of where the entrances are for vehicles for those two buildings, that concerns me. The number of vehicles that are also going to be in this area is concerning to me. And then just the fact of the placement of the buildings. I understand there's obviously regulations to not block the view from Main Street to the Heritage Building. But the fact of where the condos are and their proximity to the river, for me, is concerning as well. During COVID and really with Ottawa's planning, the idea is to allow for green spaces. It's hard to come by these spaces in the downtown core and adjacent regions like Old Ottawa East. So I'm wondering if what's Regional's plan to minimize the traffic and the safety hazards to people using the spaces, and what is the city's plan to mitigate, to minimize those risks?
So I will jump in and take the first part of your question, which is in regards to the parks. So Greystone Village is part of a master subdivision plan, and through that plan of subdivision, we are required to provide parks. So within the Greystone Village subdivision, we have the forecourt park, the Grand Alley Park, and the 30-meter corridor. Those are all things that have been components of our subdivision. In addition to that, Greystone is surrounded by both Brantwood and Springhurst parks. So there are no more public parks planned within Greystone. So while you're moving in now and you don't see a lot of those green spaces, they are coming. The forecourt and the Grand Alley, in the next couple of years will be developed. And, once the community is at full build out, you really will be able to enjoy these spaces. So I hope that answers your question on parks. With regards to transportation, I will pass this over to Jennifer and Brad to answer quickly, because they'll be able to speak to the subdivision and the capacity as a whole for traffic. But I do want to point out that it is important to note that we're still not at full build out for Greystone Village. There's still a lot. There's parking issues right now. We understand that. And there's laybys to be constructed. Like, there still are a few things that are going to be ironed out that at full build out will be a lot clearer. There'll be better signage, and some of those issues will be resolved. And one of the other things to add on top of that is that people are adjusting. Greystone was planned to be a one-car community. So people are moving in. They sometimes might have one car per person. They might have 2 cars per household, and it's going to take time to make that adjustment for them. I will pass this over now to Jen and Brad. They'll be able to give more of a context onto the overall traffic and traffic planning for Greystone.
Thanks, Evan. I'll answer the question, I guess. So overall, the proposed development is generally in line with the proposed development at the time of the subdivision, which had captured traffic flows from the overall subdivision and reviewed the area intersections. And as other development applications have come forth in the area, the several traffic impact assessments have been kind of conducted to estimate, the difference in traffic flows compared to the original report. However, in general, the findings of the analysis suggest that the intersections will operate acceptably going forward, following the development. And as Evan had kind of mentioned, is the subdivision is under construction at this time. Some of the laybys are not fully constructed, and we're in the process of getting approvals and working with the city to develop the on-street parking signage and just overall signage within the subdivision to ensure the subdivision operates safely and the parking bays are delineated going forward. But once again, like the subdivision is under construction and it is kind of ongoing, but there are plans to provide that signage and provide further guidance for the residents of the subdivision on where they can and can't park. And then as far as the development itself, they're proposing parking at a rate of generally one space per unit to which will meet the market demands and generally accommodate traffic generated by the development parking on site. There shouldn't be a flux of additional vehicles parked on the street as most of the parking is on site or the parking is on site in accordance with the zoning bylaw. And then along the frontage of the two frontages, we were proposing laybys to help facilitate any short-term loading, drop-offs, pickup activity to help move vehicles off the street during these activities. So you're not congesting up Day Chalet or Scholastic, for these pickup drop-off activities going forward. We're bringing them off the road and out of the general travel lanes for short-term activity, and so that's kind of the general plan for this site.
Okay, Brad. JC, it was also suggested that a staff perspective be provided as it relates to transportation issues.
Oh, transportation. I thought the question was more about the parks and open space as it related to staff. But in either case, I was going to say that Evan covered it quite well in saying that the parks planned for the community are such as they've already always have been, and that they are coming along with the full build out.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. The next.
So yeah, it was about the traffic issues that have not yet been addressed, and I don't know if where the city's involvement is in that, because there are safety issues for people who are trying to do active transportation and fighting with the cars that are piling up. So wasn't sure if you wanted to.
Okay, yeah, apologies for misunderstanding the question then. So in the context of this application, traffic impact assessment has been submitted and it's been reviewed by city staff. So city staff had comments and elements for the applicant team to address, and the document is still a work in progress. But those are issues that are being looked at by city staff for sure.
Miles, maybe we could talk holistically a little bit, and that might be more of what Christine and what I'm hearing Christine is, I know we've been working with the counselor and Miles in the office and trying to come up with creative solutions to address the concerns in the neighborhood that are right now. I can tell you that the building right on Main Street is going to have public parking on the P1 level. And that is opening on November the 1st. And we're hoping that that will ease some of the traffic and the parking issues that you're finding in sight. So we're hopeful that that will help as well too. And as Evan has already expressed, we're working with staff through the subdivision piece on signage as well. So so we are working on it. We're trying to solve it as an overall holistic view. I hope that is helpful.
Okay, Thank you for providing that additional response, and thank you, Christine, for jumping in and clarifying the intent of the question. I do have other folks in the queue here to ask a question. Next up, I have Heather.
Very much. I'm wondering if you could show an architectural drawing that includes the projections that come above the top story of your residential part of the building. On the buildings opposite us, those take up 2 stories and really change the profile of the building. I think it's misleading just to show the architectural design up to the top of the residential floors and not show that additional space up on the top of the building that houses elevator shafts and so on.
Yeah, so I can pull up a plan that might have that. The permitted projections are shown on all of our elevations that are reviewed by the city. They're available on the DevApps website. I'm going to poke through here to just see if I've included one. Give me 1 second. So you can see on the elevations again, and these were included in the site plan, that we do show our projections on our drawings. Chris, I'm not sure if you'd like to add on top of that.
But my understanding is that those are not to be visible above the roof of the Châtelet. And to me, that looks like it's going to be visible above.
Evan, can I jump in here? Can you flip to
Yes,
the
please.
view on Main Street? Please. If you go to the other one, or sure, that one works as well too. So so that is the agreement we had with the community association, and Ron Rose and John Dance can jump in accordingly, was that if you're standing on Main Street on the sidewalk looking down the down the Grand Allée, you will not see any projections above the roof line of the Châtelet building. So this is the perspective that our architect has done based on a 5.8 foot person or 6 foot person, I believe, standing here. Chris is going to give me a nod if that's correct. And the next slide down shows we grade out the Châtelet building, so you could see, and you can see that very thin black piece, thank you, Evan, is the elevator shaft and the lobby area that comes out. So that's the permitted projections above.
Thank
Hope
you.
that, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you for that question, Heather. The next in my list of folks is John Dance. John?
Thank you, Miles. Yeah, just a couple of things, if I may. I got to say that, I think for the most part, Greystone Village is a lot better than most of the other developments we see around us in Old Ottawa East. And I think it's proceeded pretty well as we'd hope. But here, there's a couple of questions I want to raise. I can recall defending Regional for being willing to put up 4-story rather than the allowable 6 to the south of Des Châtelet. So I really hope that it is going to be at the same height. You're not going to be able to see the step back is going to be sufficient, so you will not be able to see the 6-story portion of it, because originally what was agreed to was, even though it was zoned for 6, it was going to be 4 to the south of Des Châtelet. So that's point 1. Point 2 is I really wish the traffic for the garage wasn't going down to Scholastic, but rather would enter the parking garage from Des Châtelet, so that there would be less traffic on the roof that we all took great pride in. Anyway, I don't understand why it can't go in off Des Châtelet. I realize it's a bit of an elevation issue, but nevertheless, it would sure result in less traffic were it to go in on Des Châtelet rather than go around the corner along Scholastique. Last question I just wanted to hear the latest on is there anything new on affordable housing? I know there's the prospect of it in the Des Châtelet building, but we have this very large development, and really there isn't any affordable housing. So I am interested in Regional's perspective on that. Thanks very much.
Thanks for that, John.
So John, just to summarize the three questions that you're looking to see what Regional's perspective is on affordable housing. You had a question as to why the entrance was on Scholastic, and you had a question as to why we're proposing 6 stories instead of 4.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So to just run through your questions, in terms of affordable housing, we definitely appreciate and understand the need for affordable housing during this time. However, we're still very much in the preliminary design of the buildings. The tenureship has yet to be decided. So we'd be more than happy to double back, following our next submission and when we've, made some decisions on what to do with the, condo versus rental. So I don't have an answer right now, but again, happy to double back. In terms of your question regarding the traffic entrance from Scholastic, you did mention a grading issue, which I believe was the primary issue. Kelly, I don't know if there was anything else on top of that you'd like to add, but I believe it was a grading issue that brought it out to Scholastic.
So we investigated it actually quite a bit with our team to see where the best access was for the movement of traffic, as well as in the buildings. The Deschâtelet grade change caused significant issues to get the grades and have a safe access down into the parking garage. That was one of the big problems. And then I don't know if Jen or Brad want to jump in as well, but the preferred location from a traffic management standpoint, was my understanding, was to be on Scholastics.
Yeah, so from a traffic review point of view, an access on Deschâtelet, the sight lines looking right, coming out of the access to a vehicle that would be approaching, I guess, traveling eastbound, are limited because of the curvature of the road of Deschâtelet to the west. Being on the inside of that curve reduces the sight lines as you're looking around the bend. And for that reason, we were recommending that the access be located on Scholastic, as it has clear sight lines looking both ways. But also, in addition, we tend to like or prefer the garage, the ramp for the garage not come up at a steep grade, as it provides enhanced sight lines to pedestrians or cyclists along the road, right? Like as you're coming up the ramp, you don't want it to be on a steeper grade so that you can see pedestrians that are crossing in front of the building before you exit. Whereas on Scholastic, you're at the lowest point of the site, and we were able to reduce the driveway grades as much as we could on that side to enhance that sightline review as well.
I would just note that most of the pedestrian cycling traffic, I think, would be much more, that is, on Scholastic rather than Deschâtelet. So, it may be that you can see more on Scholastic, but there's a heck of a lot more active transportation there. Anyway, that would be my point.
And I believe the last question you had was in regards to a previous 4-story being proposed. As I kind of alluded to in my initial presentation, we've really explored a number of different plans and concepts for this block over the years. One of the things that we had committed to was, respecting the Deschâtelet building. And we felt that this proposal was appropriate and does respect that Deschâtelet building, regardless of the number of stories. So I hope that would answer your question.
Thanks, folks. Thanks, John, for those pertinent questions. there's a bit of a relationship, I think, between two of them vis-a-vis the traffic concerns and the affordable housing element, right? I think one way to see less car ownership is going to be more affordable units as part of the mix of housing. So it's anyways, good set of questions there, John. Next up on the list, I have Alexandra. Please go ahead.
Sorry, at the moment. Actually, I just have a question of clarification. The courtyard that's planned, will that be publicly accessible space?
Thanks for your question, Alexandra. No, the courtyard that will be used will be a private amenity space for the two buildings. However, the pathway that will be going through connecting the Deschâtelet Avenue down to the river will be a public pathway.
Okay, I understand that. So I just have a comment on that, as I'm not sure how well that suits the ethos of Old Ottawa South or Old Ottawa East. This is a neighborhood that we moved to 6 years ago to a new build home. And part of what drew us here is that it's a strongly community-based area where, being dense and downtown, any square foot of green space is highly valued. So I find it very concerning that there'd be a carved out portion that would be for private use in a new development.
Absolutely, and thanks for your comment. And again, I do want to reiterate that, you know, once we get that full build out and the Grand Delay is built and the forecourt park is built, in addition to the 30-meter corridor, there's really a good amount of park space in addition to Brentwood and Sprinklers. But I do hear your concern, so thanks for sharing.
Could you speak to maybe, Evan, just to help get more information in response to Alexander's question, the rationale as to why it would be a private amenity space? I hear what you're saying in terms of there being alternate spaces, but maybe if you could speak briefly to the rationale as to why.
Kelly, do you mind if I pass this over to you?
Sure. Can you go back to the site plan, Evan, please? So it looks like a big space. We're using the words courtyard. I think that maybe might be a little bit misleading, but the idea was to create a space for our residents in those buildings to be able to sit and to be, we were really trying to figure out how to bring the public through and create the separation of the public and private space. And I know there's some concerns about the pedestrian bridge, that I want to call it a bridge, what the best way to describe that is. So, and we received a bunch of comments from the community association as well as from staff to look for some clarifications and to understand that a little bit better. And what we were trying to do is try to figure out how to bring people through the site while protecting some privacy for the units as well too. So that was the rationale of how we came up with the plan that you're seeing before you. Chris, I don't know if you want to jump in a little bit more on that.
Well, we think the footpath is going to be a good experience to cross through. Yes, I hear the point about being able to access kind of as a community all the spaces, but I think in this particular case, it is a little bit of a roof terrace in a sense for these people on top of their for this phase on top of the garage. So the idea to provide them with some sort of amenity access was the driver for that, while still providing an experience through to the other green spaces.
Okay, thank you for indulging me there and adding some more information in response. I see three speakers in queue. I'm actually going to go to Robert first, though, just because he's a first-time speaker, and then we'll go to Phyllis and then Rob.
Hi, thank you for that. I'm with my wife, and just again, full disclosure, we're residents of Greystone Phase 2, and we love the community very much. We're very pleased with what EQ has done, regional has done overall. I wanted to express some real concerns that we have about, you mentioned the traffic studies that have been conducted. As a person who uses the active pathways frequently, I mean, I've been almost hit by cars a couple of times due to lack of signage of cars actually coming down Scholastic in what is supposed to be the shared pathway, the bicycle path. I have a 4-year-old grandson who has almost been hit by bicyclists whipping down the hill at I don't know what speed as well. I have a lot of concerns about the traffic implications of this overall. I know I've been stuck on Main Street, which I find is having a lot of difficulty right now coping with traffic flows. I find it difficult to understand how that's going to remain acceptable with the number of units that are being added here. So I have some general concerns overall about signage, parking, traffic management. I have nothing against the idea. We knew when we were coming into the development that buildings would be added, and I think that makes sense. But I don't think both the city and the proponent, the developer, have thought enough about the traffic issues. There are a lot of parking issues that we have as well, particularly due to the retirement home and the number of people parking, staff there parking for long periods of time with no signage and really no surveillance. And again, that also poses traffic problems because in some cases people are parking illegally and blocking streets or limiting access to streets. There are a lot of problems currently with traffic and with parking, and I'm just concerned that as we add buildings and we add density, we add new residents on Scholastic particularly, where we have a lot of active users, that we're really creating a potential mega problem, health, safety, you name it. So that's really the point that I wanted to get across. We're very concerned about this. And also, as my wife is mentioning as well, with the school coming as well, and the community center, this is also adding to the density. So we have some really strong misgivings about this. And again, not to criticize EQ, we think they've done a wonderful job with the development overall so far. But given where we're at right now, I think there's some serious issues that have to be addressed immediately, and then going forward with the new development that's being proposed. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question and your concerns. I will. I'm not an engineer by any means, so I will pass the end of the question on to our engineers. But from a high level, I do want to start by saying and echoing my point that we are still living in an active construction zone, and it will take time to implement some of those measures. The first one that you mentioned is signage. Signage is coming. We've been doing a lot of work with the city, with the councillor's office to resolve that. We're hopeful that temporary signage is going to be up in short order on some of those areas of concern. We've heard it from the residents, and we are looking to address it. But there are conversations between the councillor's office, the city, and us that need to go on. So we're getting closer to a resolution, and temporary signage will be up in short order. Another item with Scholastic is, once these buildings are finalized, those curbs and sidewalks will be up on the edge of Scholastic, which we will hope will define that street's edge a little bit more. And the last one in regards to, I've seen a few comments now in the chat about all these additional buildings being added and has this being considered. When we go through a plan of subdivision, we're required to submit a transportation impact assessment that is reviewed by the city. And the original master plan subdivision report, transportation report, accounted for 1,075 total units within Greystone Village. The count right now, projected count right now, is 957 units. So our engineers have taken a look at that, and Brad and Jen can add on to this a little bit more, but that amount of density in cars was accounted for in that original report. And I do echo your sentiments on Main Street. I drove down Main Street to work for 2 years, so I do understand it. But I think part of the city's intentions, and JC might be able to jump into this a little bit more, not to throw him under the bus here for this question, but you know, a lot of it is getting people to, you know, change their modal share. And, you know, with Main Street being busy, you know, people will, you know, it's a gradual change for people to break their habits. And that's really the idea of Greystone Village, is, you know, that one car per unit and people using that multi-use path on Main. So it will take time. We got to get to full build out, and we have accounted for those additional, you know, phase 3 units in the original report. And again, this submission gets reviewed by the transportation services and transportation engineers at the city again. Brad, I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to add on top of that, or Jen.
I'll jump in just because I've been helping out with trying to get approval of the permanent signage, which is so important in this particular development because the streets are unique in terms of that active transportation. They're narrow roads. Parking is strictly designated, and it isn't meant to be on both sides. And without signage, how do people know that? Or, you know, which side is meant to have the permanent parking? Maybe, you know, I don't know that it's clear right now without any signs. So I agree, and we know that the permanent signage has been a long time coming. I think we're getting close. We're almost there with getting final approval. We're working with the city on getting final approval of those permanent signs. In the interim, absolutely, Regional is responsible for getting, you know, temporary signs to regulate, because we hear that people are parking along both sides and you can't get a car through sometimes. That certainly isn't the intent when it's done, when it's signed. So no, it isn't being used right now the way that it's intended to be used. It will be different when those signs go up. And it is important for them to go up because of the active facilities in this area and how there's very little separation between the different modes. I hear you with the children. Along the two-way section of Scholastic here, between Oblat and Deschâtelet, the curb, or the concrete strip, I guess, separating the two-way road surface for cars versus the asphalt muck surface for bikes and people. It, you know, at the outset was intended to be flush, all one, because that's Woonarf, kind of. Woonarf really doesn't have distinction between any of it. Everyone uses all surface. That's Woonarf. Here, we're quasi because we're designating spaces. Cars aren't supposed to be driving on that 3-meter muck, right? Where the bikes and the people are, they're not supposed to. But if it's flush, it tells me I'm not supposed to, right? So with this final approval of the signage, we've modified the design a bit because, you know, getting agreement with city staff and everything, whenever you do something different, it takes more time to consider and work your way through it. So with plowing and everything else, you know, you look at it from all the angles before you get the final approval. So our design is going to change a little bit. That concrete strip is actually going to have some slope to it. There will be height at the road edge where the cars are to try and keep people off of it. We do need to get out there and get that done and in place, because we realize that there are people there now and you're having to, you know, live with that on a daily basis. So it's coming. It's been a long time coming, and I hope we're almost there.
Right on. Thank you for that, Jennifer. JC, did you want to just weigh in briefly on maybe on the signage piece in particular? Give us a sense of where things might be at from a city perspective.
Well, I don't have a very active role other than watching emails fly by, but I can only concur that the wheels are moving.
Okay. Sorry to put you on the spot there. Thanks, JC. Folks, I'm going to keep prioritizing folks that haven't had a chance to ask a question yet. So Phyllis, Ron, I will circle back to you folks, but we have 2 other first-time speakers. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Jasmine and Jonathan to please ask your question.
Yeah, hi there. This is Jasmine speaking. I wrote my question in the chat, but didn't really hear it come up again. So I thought I'd just go ahead here. Basically, it's about the school and knowing what kind of space the kids are going to have access to in terms of a yard. I know it's an urban school and it's not like a big, suburban school with a huge like our champ in the back, but it's still, kids need space to go outside. And if we're concerned about all this traffic, as everyone's been discussing, like safety for kids is paramount, right? So I just want to know how that's being considered in this.
I can take that one. So on this plan, so we sold the Châtelet building to the French Catholic School Board, and they told us that that was the space that they needed, and it's the thick, heavy black line around the Châtelet building. And Evan, if you just like run the whole area, if you can run it by, but that white square that he's circling right now is for the school board has a daycare in it. And I have been in discussions with the school board and the counselor's office and city staff about where the JKSK yard is going to go. So we're in discussions on that right now and seeing if we can come up with a solution that works. But it is
and just
contemplated and reviewed. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add on that while I have you, like,
yes,
more considerations about, like school start and end times, like it's going to be a school crossing zone, like that's going to affect all that we're talking about with the traffic flow and the safety even more, right, during those times.
Absolutely. So I know the school board is working with the city on that and the parks and rec, as well as the counselor. And we are supporting and helping them as well too. But those are discussions that are being actively happening, and I don't believe there's been any conclusions on it, but we're definitely aware of the concerns in the community and how to make it all work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay, I have another first-time speaker, Jeff O'Neill. Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening. Just a question with regards to the overall design of the buildings, I guess. First, I commend EQ for getting a different architectural firm. I think overall it's a great design. It looks good. My question is with regards to the massing at, I guess that would be the southeast corner. It seems a bit abrupt to go from the singles straight to the building at the corner. I'm wondering if there's any way to soften that transition. I like kind of what the retirement home did there with the big glass kind of outcropping there. That seemed to provide a good transition between the two. But I'm just wondering if there's any thought about that transition from the singles on Scholastic to going right straight to the 6 stories. If there's any consideration to softening that corner at all, either through landscaping or through, combination of different leveling of setbacks or just, I don't know what, but that would be my comment or question there.
Jeff, thanks for your comment and question. We'll take that back. And I think, well, you guys all know the area, but we're going from 3 stories to 6. So leave that with us and we'll review internally.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay. I now have Phyllis up next. Thank you for your patience, Phyllis.
Oh, no problem. I just had a couple of questions. At one point you mentioned that there would be 260 bike spaces, and I imagine that there will be more than one person in many of these units. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, maybe this is all you're required by city rules is 1 spot per unit, or maybe you don't even have to do 1 bike spot per unit. But what I've been hearing from some of the other buildings that have been occupied is that's not enough bike spots. So, I mean, if you're really trying to promote active transportation, I'm wondering if there's any way of getting more bike spots. I know there's several people on this call who live in the terraces, so I would love to hear their perspective as to whether or not there's enough spaces. And then I was also just wondering, you also mentioned that there'll be public parking on November 1st, but I'm assuming this is paid public parking. And I think one of the challenges right now with the retirement resident staff is I think there is parking that has been built for them at St. Paul University, but you have to pay for it. And, or even if you've paid for it, it's just a heck of a lot further. So I guess I'm wondering if the availability of paid parking doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to use it unless they would get a ticket if they were parking on the street. And my one final question, and I just want to make sure I don't have this wrong. You showed a sliver of projections, and I want to just, if you could go back to that picture where I think you had the Day Châtelet, then you took away the Day Châtelet and you showed the projection. I just want to make sure that this is actually not arising above Day Châtelet, because I thought that's what you said. No, okay, so the Day Châtelet, so it's definitely not higher than the Day Châtelet?
Yeah, that's correct.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Phyllis, maybe I could tackle the paid parking piece, and then on the bicycle parking. And I can't speak to the terraces and how people are feeling as they're living in the spaces, but we have provided 1-to-1 ratio of bicycle parking, which is large, more than we're required to. We also have oversized storage lockers and looking at seeing if we can accommodate kayak storage as well too. So the ability to store your bike in a storage locker as well too, and not just a plain old bicycle parking. And then on the paid piece, I don't know how to answer that, Phyllis, to be honest. And I think it goes back to what Evan was speaking to, is this neighborhood is in transition. It's under construction. It's different, and and I encourage, and I've spoken to both Miles and the councillor on numerous occasions with the concerns that the Corners on Main had about people parking on oblats. And, I would love to see, the guys out there ticketing. Like, I'm happy, and we support that. And we've encouraged our construction managers who are out on site, because we're flagging down people and asking them not to park in certain locations. And we're supportive of the, I don't know if it's the 311 call, but the call in to get out and get ticketing. And I think that's the only way at this point. And then to what Jennifer's talking about is signage. So I think the combination of the both will start to help, and people will start to learn. And we're hoping by providing, it is paid, but public parking, that will alleviate some pressures in the neighborhood as well too.
And just to sorry, Phyllis, did you want to follow up?
No, thank you. That's fine.
I was just thinking of Phyllis mentioned the staff of the care facility there, and wondering if is there going to be some arrangement for staff to be able to not have to pay for parking that's closer?
So staff hasn't, we haven't been approached by the senior residence owners to date that I'm aware of. Evan, I don't think you've heard anything from your end either. The school board has approached us to rent some spots as well too. So they have some in as well, and they've asked for some additional spots. So we're working with the school board, but I don't know about the retirement residents.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification. Thank you for the question, Phyllis. Ron, I have you next.
Thanks very much, Miles. I have 4 questions. First deals with traffic, and I go back to what Brad said at the beginning, that when the overall plan was developed, there was a traffic analysis done. I assume it was done on the basis of 107 or 1,000 1,075 units, each with 1 car. And he also said that as new developments come on stream, that traffic analysis is repeated. And so far, evidence shows that it's still, that there's not going to create any problems. I'm wondering if those new developments that come on stream, for example, the retirement home, Corners on Main, the school, whether each time they came online, was there a revised traffic management study done for those that are not specifically regional EQ developments? My second question regards the courtyard, and that is the courtyard absolutely necessary for the provision of amenity space, or is there adequate amenity space provided on top of and within the two buildings themselves? I note, for example, the Les Terrasses don't have a whole lot of green amenity space outside. That's my second question. Third one is to Jennifer, and could she clarify that current plans now are that there will be a raised curb along Scholastic, separating Scholastic from the multi-use pathway? And my fourth question deals with the community's concern about the massing of the south building along Scholastic as it relates to the Des Châtelet building. And I know that you have setbacks at the west end of that building where it comes close to Des Châtelet, but you also have setbacks at the river end. And I'm wondering, you know, could you not trade off some of those setbacks on the river end to provide additional setbacks to reduce the looming feature of the current building? Those are my four questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
So, John, I believe your first question was related to traffic, and did the other developments, including the retirement residence, corners, and the school, have to go through a traffic impact assessment? I would say they likely did, but I would actually defer to JC on that. I believe he was the planner on those files.
Just to clarify, Evan, I think he might be asking whether they were considered as part of the traffic impact assessments that Regional is doing as it continues to build out.
Then I'm going to pass that along to Jen and Brad.
Thank you.
Hi, I'll field that question. So the original Greystone community transportation study did account for the corners on Main development at that time. So we did incorporate the traffic study, the projections from the traffic study at that time. And as development has proceeded in the Greystone Village, yes, the traffic impact assessment has been reviewed for a number of developments throughout, and for the most part, as the developments with the blocks, the residential blocks within the subdivision were generally consistent with the original parent study. They referenced kind of the differences between, you know, the blocks at the time of the parent study, which is the community transportation study, and the development at the time of site plan application. So there was traffic impact assessments prepared in support of those. However, for the most part, the intersection analysis was left to the original parent study. However, as part of the school development, due to the change in use and the higher traffic generation for the Des Châtelet building compared to the original study, a traffic impact assessment was prepared in support of that application, in which had done a full review or a full update of the intersection capacity analysis in the area to account for the changing use of the Des Châtelet building. So yes, as part of the school did capture an updated intersection analysis, but for the most part, the remainder of the blocks within the subdivision had reference back to the parent study.
I believe your next question, or one of your next questions, was on the courtyard. We can confirm the zoning requirement for the amenity space. Whether this is excess or not, we'll have to take that back to the team. But the reason that we have that space is to provide that separation from the Des Châtelets. And we thought it was, what we have planned now, we thought was a creative and unique opportunity that would be an excellent addition to Phase 3 to be used by the future Phase 3 residents. And then you had another question regarding massing. And Chris, if I can pass that over to you.
Ron, can you just describe the massing concerns one more time? I didn't fully understand, and maybe with the picture up might help. If you could reiterate that for us.
Sure. We have the west end of the building that goes along Des Châtelets beside the Des Châtelets building. And then we have the east end down by the river. Okay. I know that you have done some setbacks on the top floor of that Des Châtelets Avenue building on the west end where it is near the Des Châtelets. But you have also done setbacks at the east end where the river, or on the river end of that building. And my question was, could you not reduce the amount of setback on the east end and increase the amount of setback on the west end so that it would be less imposing on the Des Châtelets and on the school?
So if okay, so what I understand is reducing the setbacks on the east end by the river and increasing the setbacks adjacent to the Des Châtelets by the forecourt.
That's it.
Okay, we will take that comment back. I don't have an answer for you right now.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Brad, for your reply as well. And there was just the one question left for Jennifer.
Absolutely. So regarding, I was mentioning earlier, the section of Scholastic that's two-way, and I see in the chat there's still questions about, well, which part's two-way? So just back in history, I guess a little bit, all of Scholastic was meant or planned to be one-way at one time, but the current plan and the approved plan is, from Tellman to Des Châtelets, it is still totally one way. So the driving surface itself is 3.5 meters. And then we have the 1 meter concrete strip. And then we have the multi-use pathway, which is 3. So the whole width is required. And the biggest driver for that strip to be flush in that area is fire route. We need 6 meter width for a fire route for a fire truck. So that strip can't be raised and get a fire truck down that part. But the section that is between Des Châtelets and Oblat, which is across this site's frontage, is planned as two-way. And it was more changed for access, actually, for this particular block, with the more southerly part staying as one way. And it was more to not promote traffic down towards Clegg. But so within this section that is planned and is approved as two-way, the driving surface is 6 meters, I believe. And then there's the 1 meter strip and the 3 meter multi-use pathway. But in this area, since we have that width for the fire route, there's, as I say, the pavement marking and signage plans have been a really long time coming because there's been much debate on how to paint and sign this because it is such a different design. So at the end of the day, we went round and round in circles, and it was agreed with city staff that, yep, there should be some height on that curb where we can in that two-way section to separate those drivers from the multi-use pathway. I know in the one-way section, there are some signs on that flush concrete strip. On this section, the signs right now, anyway, as I say, I shouldn't get hung up on details, but because it's still not approved, we're hoping we're almost there. But anyway, signs may go at the back of the pathway, but at any rate, there will be signs. And yes, in this two-way section, that lip of the concrete strip will be raised on the roadside and it will slope down towards the multi-use path.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I didn't want to leave the impression that I wasn't happy with the southern end of Scholastic. I think that works extremely well. Having the one-way section keeps traffic away from Clegg, as you said, and the separation, or actually the unification of activities along that whole width is really quite good, and it's a positive aspect. So yeah, it's certainly working well, and I wouldn't suggest you change that. But I'm glad to hear that there will be some kind of a raised separation along the two-way aspect of Scholastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. I do see no other hands raised. There is a question from, I'm not sure if it's Jean or Jean Cassidy in the chat, just looking for confirmation on whether there's rooftop amenities for the Phase 3 residents. And then another one just came in from Greg about outlining the timelines for the Phase 3 development and how it will impact timelines for the overall Greystone Village development, looking specifically for a completion date for both.
So I can clarify that there are rooftop amenities. We're working through right now what those plans are. Again, these designs are preliminary. When we do have something more concrete, we're happy to revisit that with the community. And sorry, the second question was.
Oh, the second question is outline of timelines for the Phase 3 portion of the development and how that may or may not impact timelines overall for Greystone Village. And they're looking for estimates, expected completion dates.
Okay,
and,
gotcha.
And also just Greg just flagged green space in particular as something they're looking for a timeline on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we don't have a timeline right now for construction of Phase 3. I would anticipate it's at least a year away until we would start construction. We would proceed with the north building first. How Phase 3 develops doesn't really have an impact on how the rest of the site develops. The Grand Lake Park, we're hoping to get started in the next year. I believe it's next summer. And the forecourt park, we don't have an exact timing on yet. But again, I will continue to keep the community updated as we have our construction dates a little bit more finalized.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So that's all the questions I see. I think I'll pass it to the councillor if he's here. I'll say as well, just before Sean offers a few words, that we still want to hear from folks. If you still have questions and only think of them after the meeting, that's okay. Just send us an email. JC put his email as well in the chat earlier on. You can also email us. Ideally, you email both of us. Our email is, thank you, JC, for putting the email in the chat again. I'll also throw ours in there as well. And I'm not sure, Councillor Menard, are you with us?
I'm here. I've been listening along intently in the background here. Thanks very much, Miles, for hosting this. You did an excellent job, and the questions were very good. It seems obvious that we need to work with regional some more on this, and hopefully we see a few tweaks. There's really good suggestions this evening and questions, and some of the side of the city that needs to work on this as well. So obviously, like the traffic piece that comes after, we do get emails around the traffic currently and the parking situation currently in Greystone, and so we recognize that's an issue, and we've been trying to mitigate wherever we can with this. We've been quite proactive, and I know Ariella on the call deals with that on a regular basis, and John from our office too. So look, thank you for the feedback on this for our office, and we have some homework to do with regional to hopefully tweak some of these proposals to get the very best development we can here. Very much appreciate the time tonight and for your submissions. Miles, I'll pass it back to you if there's anything else you wanted to add. And yes, thank you, JC, to you as well. Looks like somebody's asking about the TIA as well, traffic impact assessment referenced. That should be online, but I'll let you speak to that, Miles. Yeah, there's the dev absolute.
Yeah, perfect. And I did, somebody had asked that the slide show from tonight be shared as well. And someone from regional, I think Kelly, agreed to send me that in an email, and we can share it with you either, over email. We'll send and we'll include the link to the traffic impact assessment as well. Thanks again. I think that's all I had to say. Again, folks, please send us an email if something comes to mind after tonight. Questions, comments, we do want to hear from you. And thanks again, everyone, for participating.
Thank you very much, Miles. And, thanks to the counselor as well for organizing and sticking around. And thanks to everybody in the community for their comments. It was very helpful. Bye.
Good night, everyone.